welcome to ABA Inside Track, the podcast that's like reading in your car, but safer. I'm your host, Robert Perry Cruz, and with me as always are my fabulous co-hosts.
Hello, Rob. It's Diana.
Good afternoon, Robert. This is Jacqueline Marie McDonald.
It's so nice to see you both.
Thanks.
Because on the eve of this...
Delilah.
What?
Ooh. Hi, I have a husband and 15 children.
I don't understand this reference.
Go ahead.
I used to be one of my top reinforcers for working late. Is listening to Delilah on the way home. I know. Don't judge me. It's a guilty pleasure. I didn't want to tell you, but you asked me.
Oh.
Good thing we asked.
Good thing you didn't ask, but I just brought it up.
No. Well, speaking of which, on the eve of the recording of this behavior analytic podcast in which we talk about research related to behavior analysis, in which every week we pick a topic and then we discuss that topic and research related to that topic, I wanted to get you guys a little present. So I said, what would Jackie and Diana like? And I guessed, and I bought you each a special present. So Jackie, for you, I bought you a signed copy of a Star Wars comic book. Here you go. I know how much you love that. And then Diana, I had to guess really good, but I got you a pair of gardening shears because I know you love gardening.
Oh my goodness.
How'd I do, guys? Are you really excited to podcast now because you're going to podcast your best because you got some special items?
Wow. I think if you switched those, you'd be right on target.
If you got me something from Target, maybe you'd be right on target.
Wait, so I guessed what you might like as a reinforcer and I was way off base?
Yeah, we're 100% way off base, Rob.
What?
You're about to spoiler alert the whole episode.
Well, I mean, the point of this episode is identifying staff reinforcers, so
You failed.
I guess just guessing and
I don't want
buying you
garden
things.
shears.
It didn't work? Are you going to leave now? Don't leave the podcast, please. I need you here to talk about this research.
What's the research about, Rob?
Well, it's identifying staff reinforcers, which I said a little earlier. Yes, this week we're talking about identifying staff reinforcers because one of the key components of any good manager is going to be thinking about how can you reinforce the good work of the staff under your supervision. And a classic management tool of just getting some stuff and throwing it at people, whether physically or metaphorically, may not be the best strategy. So we'll be talking about some articles related to how you might improve your ability to choose and deliver this reinforcement to your staff.
I love that. And remember, it's only a reinforcer if it's delivered contingent on behavior and it leads to an increase in that behavior in the future.
Yes. As the definition of reinforcement.
As the definition of reinforcer is. But I think sometimes people talk about staff reinforcers and they're like, I gave you something. Right? I gave you something and thus it constitutes as a reinforcer, but that may not be so.
So perhaps we should have titled this episode Identifying Staff Highly Preferred Items that most likely will function as a reinforcer based on previous research. That title got long and iTunes rejected it, so we cut it down a little bit. You understand, listeners. We know you do. So we've got 5 articles to discuss, of which 2 are kind of our background material and 3 are going to be our main discussion points. And they are a comparison of verbal and tangible stimulus preference assessment methods in adults with schizophrenia by Wilder, Wilson, Ellsworth, and Hearing from Behavioral Interventions 2003. A comparison of verbal and tangible stimulus preference assessments by Cohen, Almeida, Graff, and Ahern from the Journal of Applied Behavior Analysis 2000. Exploring the utility of preference assessments in organizational behavior management by Waldvogel and Dixon from the Journal of Organizational Behavior Management 2008. The accuracy of managerial prediction of employee preference, a brief report by Wilder, Roast, and McMahon from the Journal of Organizational Behavior Management 2007. And How May I Help You? Improving Telephone Customer Service in a Medical Clinic Setting by Slowiak from the Journal of Organizational Behavior Management 2014.
That's the best title. I love it when titles are catchy because I can never think of catchy titles. Mine are always like the boring, like straight to the point titles.
Mm-hmm.
I'm more likely to read an article if the title is catchy.
If I did research, I would only title my research like pithy things and not be published because everyone would think I wasn't taking it seriously.
No, they would read it.
Yeah, I think they checked on conference talk attendance and they found that when they have funny or pithy titles that they get better attendance. But for articles, you're just supposed to put Harry Potter and in front of the rest of the title.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's the way to do it?
Yeah, exactly.
Harry Potter and How May I Help You?
No, Harry Potter and the accuracy of managerial prediction. See?
Oh,
Sounds more interesting now.
cool.
Yeah.
All right.
You're welcome.
There you go. So why don't we get started by discussing a little bit of the behind the scenes of, is it even possible to identify staff reinforcers or highly preferred items that most likely function as reinforcers? Is it even possible? Because certainly for much of our research, we spent a lot of time reading research, looking at all sorts of fancy preference assessment techniques, very few of which are, hey, you want this? But wouldn't it be nice if a preference assessment in which you literally just asked that question actually correlated with the results from a much more fancy and formalized preference assessment? Well, luckily for us, someone did that research back in the early 2000s, as well as other follow-up research. So I'm going to really briefly talk about the Wilder, Wilson, Ellsworth, and Hearing.
I was just going to say, before we got into all of that, I think to kind of back it up, like what we were going to talk about in this episode was like tangible reinforcers, right? So like something else that you maybe want to sort of add in or enhance your overall staff, reinforcer pool. But we don't want to discount the value of quality, praise, and attention as a staff reinforcer, because that also can be really effective. But we're not focusing on that specifically in this episode. But I kind of wanted to give that caveat ahead of time, because I think when people think about reinforcers, they think, I need all these things, right? I need lots of money. I wish I could buy everyone pizza parties all the time and extra coffee drinks and having full-size candy bars in the lounge. Like, that would be probably number one for me, right? But all of those things add up and cost a lot of money. And I think that can be a potential deterrent to people from even kind of like starting down this path. So while we're going to talk about what types of tangible items you might be able to use to enhance your staff experience, don't forget that very often the most potent reinforcer you can provide is your individualized feedback for someone, a handwritten note,
that's genuine
email, something genuine, personalized, that represents the relationship that you've established with them through your actual care and attention.
I want money. That's what I want.
Yeah. But we can't always have money, right? So when you do...
Well, then I quit. I won't work for you no more.
Fair enough. Might want to find a different field. But when you do have a little bit of money that has been allocated to staff reinforcement, then you want to make sure you're utilizing it in the best way that you can.
Gotcha.
Okay.
So,
go.
Genuine praise and attention is number one because it's cheap and works really well. But you want to have something super special in your back pocket that probably costs a little bit of money, but not too much. How can you efficiently find this?
If it's in your back pocket, I would probably say Twizzlers, because those...
It was a candy bar. I sat on it.
Exactly. I was going to Snickers bar, not going to be good after it's in your back pocket. It's going to be all melty and smushed.
I guess that
Twizzlers?
Smushed candy in my pants was your number one preferred item.
You know what's sad? I still probably would have eaten it. Right? I love candy so much.
It's still okay.
It's still fine. It was in the package. It's only like
Diana said, it's a thought that counts.
Right. Like here's a chocolate that's been in my car for 6 months. Eat it. And I'd be like, yay!
You're the best. Have this melty glove box chocolate.
Someone did just give me Tootsie Rolls from the pre-pandemic period, and they wrapped them up. And then I put them in my mouth, and I thought I was going to break a tooth.
Oh, yeah, they probably were really hard.
They were gross.
I want to get some...
I still ate them.
I love Tootsie Roll, all Tootsie Roll products. I love the fruit ones, the vanilla ones, the chocolate ones, the Tootsie Pops, the big fat ones.
Anyway.
I want the gum that comes in packs of trading cards from the 80s.
Bazooka?
No. It's like you buy a pack of like Return of the Jedi cards.
Oh.
And it would be like a flat stick of gum.
I do know.
And it would snap off in half in your mouth. And if you tried to eat it now, it would probably just dissolve immediately in your mouth because it's not made of gum. It's made of something, chemicals of some kind. Anyway, we're off topic. Let's talk about...
So that is a good thing or not a good thing? I couldn't tell.
It would have been if I'd gotten it in the 80s. If I got it now, I don't think I'd like it as much.
Okay. It's got a shelf life.
Yeah. Most of these things do.
Fun Dip doesn't.
Ugh.
That could go in your back pocket.
Mm-hmm.
That's true, unless it's open. And then you got to like take it out of your pocket with your hands.
Then the candy stick could break.
You're right.
Just put the candy stick in my pocket.
Okay.
Okay, anyway.
All right.
Sorry, I interrupted you.
You did. So then I had a comedy tangent, which I'm sure everyone found amusing.
They're like, get on with it.
All right. So honestly, the Cohen-Almeida, Graffin-Ahern, and the Wilder-Wilson-Ellsworth and Hearing articles are kind of the same article, just with different populations. But luckily for us, this research was done a very long time ago, and it's been replicated and extended so much that I think we'll sort of generally talk about the procedure. And the crux of it really looked at, could individuals identify, with their verbal behavior, highly preferred items, similar to how you would do, say, a 2-item forced choice preference assessment. And so both kind of research groups sort of looked at this, pretty much did a Fisher, 92 forced item preference assessment. And then they went and they did a verbal preference assessment using the same items. Sometimes they use index cards and they give the items. So there was more like a textual in some cases than a verbal. But basically it came down to, do you want this or that, in which this or that were replaced with one of the items. And then you sort of look at, okay, is there a correlation between the results of the two preference assessments? And I took a little bit more notes on the Wilder's group. So looking at the results with adults with schizophrenia. And for the most part, yes, those hierarchies, had pretty high correlation in terms of whether you did an actual forced choice preference assessment with the items versus, say, the verbal/textual preference assessment in pretty much the same format. The findings really put at, it really went to 3 out of the 4 participants in that Wilder study, high correlation, as well as the highest preferred item being the same in both. The lowest items were actually the same in both. So kind of the caveat here is that a verbal preference assessment is probably going to get you a pretty accurate high preferred item and possibly low preferred item or least preferred item. Maybe the moderate items won't be quite as good. But again, who cares about the moderate items? It's the least interesting items in a preference assessment. Although, for some kids, they actually do function as reinforcers just the same as the top item, just perhaps not as highly reinforcing.
Well, it's all relative.
It's all relative. That's right. And then the question came up, well, what might mean the difference between success and failure for a verbal preference assessment? Could it be IQ? Which, again, is very important because, it would be nice to know that preference assessments would work across populations rather than only with certain individuals. And it didn't seem like IQ had anything to do with the results, at least in the Wilder study. The person with the second highest IQ actually had the lowest correspondence score, although it was still a pretty good correspondence score. Whereas there was another individual with a much lower IQ actually had the highest correspondence score, or a very high correspondence score. So it possibly has more to do with, say, the ability of the individual to discriminate between items, label items. Those seem to be the key factors involved. And can you use the verbal preference assessment? So with that out of the way, knowing that you can use a verbal preference assessment, that means we should be able to use a similar preference assessment in the workplace, where you're mostly going to be using either textual or verbal responses with your employees. I feel like most people would be insulted if it was like, I want to figure out what you like. Here are 2 items. I want you to pick one. And then you can go interact with it for 30 seconds. Then come right back. I'm going to give you 2 more
I'd actually
items.
love that. What a good waste of a day.
Do you like praise or, bulletin board on the wall? Go put this bulletin board up on the wall for 30 seconds. Then take it down.
I would love that. That would be my dream day. Doesn't it?
Very artificial, which it is very artificial.
It is
true. Go park your car in the special spot for 30 seconds. Then go back. park it somewhere else.
That's funny. The whole thing is very artificial, right?
And it is.
We're so used to learning about these types of paired stimulus assessments or MSWO that for us, that seems like the way that you would gain, information about what someone prefers, right? We're like, of course, you would do a paired stimulus preference assessment. But those methods were established because you couldn't ask someone what they liked. Mm-hmm. So we are reverse engineering now, going backwards to thinking about things in the way where you have to actually, tangibly present them to someone in order to get a good feel for it. Backwards now to how would we apply that to someone for whom verbally asking them is likely going to give you a similar hierarchy. All we need to do is ask.
Yes. But luckily we've established that, so we're able to continue on and not have to ask that question over and over, right? All right. Why don't I keep going? Because I'm going to talk about another David Wilder study.
He's all over this.
I know. I actually emailed David Wilder once to ask about his schizophrenia research, and he wrote me back really fast. And I told him that at a Babbitt conference. I was so excited. And I think he was a little concerned that I was a scary person. And he was he was very polite, but I think it was this guy. What's up with him? I said, you're highest on my verbal preference assessment.
Gosh, that would be amazing. That's the best Valentine's Day gift ever.
Would it be? I don't know. Maybe it's scary.
A very close note of your name on your name tag.
Sometimes I feel like maybe I think I'm more charming than I actually am. I'm more scary than anything. All right.
Not when you wear your bow tie.
If I wear my bow tie, I'm 100% charming. So Wilder and his colleagues decided to kind of jump ahead with this research and look into, well, all right, so we have technology to do verbal preference assessments, but, that might be tricky. What if a manager just guessed at what their employees would love the best? And if you loved our comedy bit at the beginning, then you kind of know the results of this research. But I'm going to go through it anyway, because it's the journey that matters. Sometimes our preference assessments we found along the way are really the important part. So these colleagues are going to be using a survey from a work by Daniels, Aubrey Daniels and his colleagues in the organizational behavior management field, a survey that could be used as a staff preference assessment. And usually there's one for the managers to fill out and then one for the employees to fill out. And again, there's been previous research with like parents or caregivers of children with disabilities, and usually the results come out pretty poor. It's like chance that you're going to guess what this child is going to prefer or find the highest preferred on the sort of scale. So again, it's usually not thought very positively that one would be able to do that. However, workplace is very different than, say, a school for children with disabilities, in that adults are boring and only have so many things they like. So you probably have a smaller pool. Many adults like the same things. They're all working in the same location, so maybe they just have a lot of the same interests. So it's possible that managers will choose better of what their employees will, find most highly preferable. So let's take a look.
Or the range of things that you can access at work or be provided at work is so much smaller.
I don't know what kind of a draconic workplace you're in, Diana, but the sky's the limit where I work. I work in a tech startup. we're we got billions in VC to spend on ping pong tables.
Party.
Yep. We're drunk all the time. It's a great location, really. Unicorns everywhere. Smoothie, whatever you want, it's there. So, is it possible for managers to accurately predict what their employees will rate as their most preferred items or activities?
No.
Okay, well, why don't you slow your roll there? I do love that this study used so many employees and managers. We talk about generality of results. Well, you've got employees and manager kind of dyads that range in age from 18 to 62. They're in 5 different settings and very different workplace settings. So it's really cool that they have these results and they carried over across so many places. So you've got your technical service call center for satellite communications. You've got a warehouse. You've got an administrative assistant in a university office. You've got food service workers. You've got managers of a restaurant. So I guess there was a manager of all the managers. That one kind of confused me. The researchers started by asking the managers, the 5 managers, name 4 to 6 things that, you think employees might like in general. And again, think of cost. You've been complaining about, Diana, as a mean boss. Think about the cost and availability of these things. Don't be cool like a cool boss. And think of anything you want in the whole wide world. If you can't think of them, they gave them 8 to 12 items. Some people like these things. So again, you got a list of about 4 to 6 items that the manager said.
Ironic stress.
These might be nice. Ironic stress ball?
Yeah.
I don't know if that was on the list.
Darn.
And so in terms of the examples, I'll give you a couple of them. There's a holiday, sporting events tickets, which don't cost $5. I mean, maybe if it's a really bad team, a $10 spa gift certificate, a restaurant certificate, a bookstore certificate, which can no longer be redeemed as bookstores don't exist anymore. Maybe an Amazon gift card nowadays. Calligraphy supplies made the list. Chocolate at work, cookies at work, lip gloss, hair accessories, nail polish, a lunch with coworkers, a day of overtime, formal recognition from the manager, just all sorts of things. Permission to attend a professional event. Yikes. Starting to get a little dire with some of those later ones.
I think lip gloss is kind of dire too.
$10 worth of lip gloss.
It's a lot of lip gloss. You're set for life.
A very fancy one.
Maybe.
Depending. Yeah. You could maybe go to a local sporting event for $10.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Go sports
not
team.
Here, but
I don't know. What's it cost to get into a Bravehearts game out in Worcester?
$8.
Yeah, it's not expensive. Okay, so I guess you could.
The local baseball team, everyone.
Well, it's a college.
Yeah.
So in any case, you've got all these different choices. And in the first phase, they took those kind of suggested items and they asked the manager, okay, manager, rank each of these items based on how much you believe each employee that you supervise would prefer these items. So kind of nice rank order. Out of a 1 to 6, 1's the best, 6 is the least preferred. And then phase 2, they took those same items and said to the employees, hey, do exactly what I just asked your manager to do and rate the items from 1 to 6. And then they took those results and they compared what did the manager say about what the employees would say, and then what did the employees actually say, and looked to see, well, what's the correlation there? They also counted how many times the manager identified the most highly preferred item for each employee. And they also asked the managers a fun question of how well do you think you know your employee? Kind of wondering, well, do the managers that say I know my employees super well actually then more accurately guess versus the managers who are like, I don't really know my employees too well, so I'm just, shooting in the dark and I'm going to get it right. Yeah. And the results are just all over the place. So you've got 27 participants. And you're looking at those correlation ranks, and they ranged from -1, meaning not at all correlated, all the way to 1, which means perfectly correlated.
Oh.
However, when you look at the mean correlation, it was only 0.11, which would be sort of a bleh, correlation. 5 of the 27 correlations were considered significant, which is, okay, that's interesting. However, when you look and see that only 3 of them were for positive correlations, 2 were for negative correlations. You're sort of back in the blah, section of the results. The managers did correctly identify the employee's most preferred item in 15 out of the 27 employees. So, a little better than half.
Ooh.
Yeah, I mean, it's not exactly chance because they had 6 items and, there were all these different items, but it's not great. Although in the discussion, when you kind of do your little summary statement, it does sound more positive. If someone told me I got 15 out of 27 on a test, I'd say, study harder and try again. So 15 out of 27, not great. And the managers who knew the employees best didn't do any better than the managers who knew the employees least. So knowledge of an employee or comfort level of an employee, familiarity with an employee really had nothing to do with whether or not you could make an accurate guess. So if you are a manager and you would like to guess maybe somebody's very, very top, highly preferred item, you could give it a go, or you could use the survey that they used here. Realistically, there wasn't, much in the way of, I think, time savings. I think some of the other studies, you're saving, a minute or 2 minutes for doing, a survey versus some of the other techniques you could use. But it doesn't take very long either way. So if you 100% have to know what people love the most, and certainly what they love the least, you probably want to do an employee survey. But if you're in a pinch and you want to get everyone something special, maybe it's like your first day on the job as a manager, and you're thinking, I don't have time to meet with all my employees, which would probably be a great way to spend your first day working with your employees, actually. But you have to buy them something for some reason, a small item. You may do okay if you just make a best guess of what everyone's top preferred item would be.
Muffins.
You could go wrong with muffins, but perhaps you'd be okay if you just made a wild guess.
A selection of muffins.
What if somebody doesn't like muffins, or they're on a diet?
GF muffins.
Okay, there you go.
Someone no nuts.
I just feel like you're setting yourself up for an office scene where someone goes, I'm allergic to nuts. And they say, I got muffins without nuts. And people are like, well, they ate all the muffins without nuts. Everyone's allergic to nuts. Like, oh. And then wackiness ensues.
Maybe. I just like muffins a lot.
So you can, roll the dice on picking your employee's favorite items, but you're probably better off just asking using a simple verbal preference assessment. But I don't know. Maybe there's other research that does something different. Why don't we take a quick break? And when we come back, we shall talk about that research. We'll be right back.
Do you want to be a BCBA?
Sure, we all do.
Now you can come to Regis College in Weston, Mass. to get your graduate degree.
Choose from any one of these courses.
Masters of Science in Applied Behavior Analysis.
Masters of Science in Special Education.
Dual degree in Special Ed and ABA.
Or be eligible for your postmaster's certificate.
You can complete your degree and be ready to sit for the exam in 2 years. And our 2017 grads had a 100% pass rate on the BACB exam.
Come enjoy practicum placement support, ethics mini handbooks, PhD-level professors, small class sizes, and a service trip to Iceland.
If interested, don't delay. Supplies are limited. Learn more at regiscollege.edu.
Again, that's www.regiscollege.edu, regiscollege.edu. One more time, www.regiscollege.edu. See you there!
And we are back talking about identifying staff reinforcers. Not reinforcers, actually just highest preferred items that probably function as reinforcers. That's the episode, folks.
We actually don't know.
But we're not quite sure. But before we get back into our discussion of the research, I want to remind all of you listeners that ABA Inside Track is ACE approved. By listening to the show, you are able to earn 1 learning credit. Huzzah! All you need to do is finish listening and then go to our website, abainsidetrack.com/getCEUs. That's GET-CEUS. While you're there, you just need to enter in a few bits of information, including 2 secret code words that we've hidden in the episode. Surprise! Here's the first one. It jumped out at you. It's Starbucks. STARBUCKS. If I were to guess, that's Jackie's most preferred reinforcer or item that might function as a reinforcer.
It would, as long as I could restrict access to it. And maybe even not then. I love it so much.
You get all the chai lattes?
I get chai lattes a lot. Diana can testify. I rope her in. Man, I need a chai latte.
She's
Diana.
enabling it. She's enabling this behavior.
Yes, she is.
I'm 100% the enabler.
Wow.
Well, usually you're the instigator, and I just support your decision.
That's right. You never say, let's get chai teas. I always say it first.
She says, I invite you to get a chai latte.
I'm like, and I'll buy it so that you don't even have to buy it.
It works out great for me.
Starbucks. That was a real non sequitur for keyword there. All right. Let's move on. So when we left off, we had discussed that as a manager, you probably want to ask your employees what it is they would like as a preferred item. However, one of the pieces of this research didn't actually occur, and they mentioned in the limitations, was do any of these items function as reinforcers? So it's a theme we're going to keep coming back to here.
Yes, but it's not a question I'm going to answer for you right now.
No.
I'm going to talk to you about the Waldvogel and Dixon article. Now that we've established that we should ask our employees what it is that they like, the question that they want to ask is, what is the best way to ask? And, to get into that, they go over some of the same pieces I think that we've talked about a little bit already, which is that people would really like to have money in order to buy things for their staff because we want our staff to like to come to work.
We want money.
That's what we want. And we want them to feel appreciated, be experiencing an enriched environment in which they don't feel like, they're just coming to work and going home and nothing special ever happens, right? But there are limitations on how much money we have available for this type of staff enrichment / reinforcement. Even though we know that money works and we can use money as a reinforcer, as evidenced by the way the world works.
Well, the way the world usually seems to work is, let's use money to solve this problem. And then once the problem seems solved for like a week, they're like, great, we can't keep using this money. And then everything goes back to the way it was.
True. But we do all go to work for money.
Or do we?
I definitely do.
I think so. I know it's a little more complicated than that, but there is a bottom line there that you do go to work to get money.
There was a great talk at Babbitt a couple years back on, is money a reinforcer? Or is your salary a reinforcer?
Mm-hmm.
And I wish I could remember who the speaker was. I don't have any of my programs handy. But his conclusion was not really.
A lot of it's just negative reinforcement.
Yeah.
Right? But if you stop getting paid, your behavior would change. Unless you're just so independently wealthy that you wouldn't notice, but most of us are not in that position. So money is serving some type of function in maintenance of our behavior, I would say. However, we don't always have a lot extra in order to, help to build up additional behavior that we'd like to see in our staff. So we have to get creative and think of other ways. What Waldvogel and Dixon are saying here is we should be looking at other potential forms of reinforcement that are also effective for staff, or in addition to what we are talking about, genuine praise, notes, emails. Those are all really valuable. But are there other types of tangible items that might be a little more cost effective than just straight up cash that we could use? And their examples were things like t-shirts or lottery tickets or time off that could function as reinforcers, but be, more cost effective. But what we, learned already is that if employers just guess these things for themselves without staff input, they may be wrong. And if you're wrong and you've then spent the little money that you had, you have now, own a whole bunch of stress balls that no one actually really wanted and don't function as reinforcers the way that you thought they would. So instead of doing that, why don't we ask the staff ourselves? So what they wanted to do here was say, what we really want to do is just ask people. But we should also make sure that when we compare that to what we as behavior analysts think of as traditional preference assessment, such as an MSWO, do we see correlations between a rank order preference assessment and an MSWO? So that's exactly what they did.
Good question.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. They had 4 direct care staff in the study, so not as many as the one in yours, Rob. They were all female. They were aged 22 to 30 years old. Had all worked at the facility where this was conducted for less than 6 months. So they were pretty new. They were full-time, and they all had a high school diploma and earned $8.75 an hour.
I don't remember that coming into play later in the study. They just were mentioning their salary.
Yep. They just let us know.
Now I'm thinking that's the study is, depending on how much money you make, how much do extra items change your performance?
Maybe it was relevant for that reason, but I think it's helpful when you get that type of demographic info, right? Because that could make the study have more or less generality to other groups, depending. But there's so little research in this area that we still don't know that much. But that's what we know about this group. So the independent variable here was really just these 2 types of preference assessments, and then the dependent variable was the resulting ranking of the items based on these preference assessments. So the first thing they did was a ranking survey. They had 10 items that were presented, and the participant could rank the items 1 to 10. Now, wait, hold up, because 1 is actually the most preferred item, and 10 is the least preferred item, okay? So it's not like a Likert scale where 5 is the best. Here, 1 is the best. So that is a tiny bit different, but don't worry, all right? And you were ranking them, so it's not like you could rank everything a 1. Only one thing was in the 1 slot. Here are the things, because I know you want to know what they are.
Mm-hmm.
The first one was 34 minutes of time off of work with the supervisor covering your shift.
34 minutes?
34 minutes. I don't know why it was 34 minutes.
Maybe that was like the
length of lunch,
time for an activity.
They had 4 minutes to get to their seat and then 30 minutes to enjoy lunch.
Well, they had 2 minutes to get there, 2 minutes to get back.
Maybe. I don't know. They didn't say why it was specifically 34 minutes, but that's what it was.
Maybe it's like when you try to look at public school schedules and like nothing can just start at 9. It's like, it's at 9:03 and the next period will start at like 9:57. It's like, why?
Maybe. So that was a little bit odd. Candy, McDonald's gift certificate, T-shirt, Walmart gift card.
What kind of T-shirt?
Did not specify.
Just like a white T-shirt?
Didn't say. I would assume it was a T-shirt for the company. They didn't say. I don't know. It was only worth $5. That's why I made that assumption.
Was it one of those shirts that's really, really big and it's got a dog on it? It says, "Big dogs, get off the porch."
I love that.
I think so. It didn't say, guys, so I don't know. It was worth $5.
Okay.
So
possibly a giant T-shirt that said "Big dogs
it could have been.
off the leash" or something. Yeah.
Okay, the next one you're going to like too, a prepaid phone card.
Wow.
You don't see many of those these days. Starbucks gift card, a movie rental coupon.
To
Blockbuster.
Blockbuster.
Guessing.
Yes.
Gotta go all the way to Oregon.
This was in 2008 that this was published. I don't know how long prior to that it was.
When did Blockbusters close?
Unless I wrote the wrong thing. Maybe it's to go to the movies, but it's only $5, so you're not getting very far in to the movies for $5.
At least see half of the movie.
Yeah. A parking spot in the driveway for 5 days, or public recognition, which included putting your picture on the wall.
That sounds like the most diversive of these options.
Okay. Everything was worth approximately $5 except the parking spot and public recognition, which I wrote, which were worthless.
No, Diana, you wrote, "Which were worthless." Ha ha.
I'm doing the ha-ha right now.
Oh, okay. That's your cue to laugh.
I'm reminding myself to laugh.
We script these out. You might think we're sort of just, going off our notes, but no. Highly scripted.
So each of them ranked those things 1 to 10. All right. Then, directly after that, they did an MSWO where they chose the 3 highest preferred and the 3 lowest preferred ranked items, wrote them on index cards, so it was a textual stimulus, and presented them as an MSWO, which means they put them out, they said, pick one, they selected a card, they did not receive the item, the cards were then rearranged, the 5 remaining cards, then the 4, then the 3, then the 2, then the 1, and they did that 3 times in order to establish stability. And that was the procedures for this study, and that was it. They did some IOA, it was 100%, and now the results. For 3 out of 4 participants, they discovered that their hierarchies did change in the MSWO compared to the ranking survey, but not a ton. So their overall correlation was actually pretty good. And once they got into the MSWO, their rankings within that, because they did it the 3 times, those were pretty consistent. So they weren't worried about that. It was really just the correlation between the two. But the overall correlation ranged from 0.6 to 1.0. So it was mostly positive. And for one of them, it was a precise match. And for 3 of the 4, the bottom 3 things from the ranking were the bottom 3 things in the MSWO, and the top 3 things in the ranking were the top 3 things in the MSWO. And then for one participant, they just had one that was flipped. So they were fairly consistent, right? So they overall felt like if you use this ranking system, you could pretty well establish the top 3, which is the whole point. No one's probably trying to establish the bottom 3, just the top 3, right? So you could pretty well establish the top 3. So I'll just give you quickly an example. So Paige had the lowest correlation. So here is her order for ranking things from best to worst: McDonald's, candy, Starbucks, cover your shift, t-shirt, public recognition. And then for her MSWO, it was candy, Starbucks, McDonald's, which were the same as the top 3, just in different order, public recognition, t-shirt, cover shift, which were the bottom 3, just in a different order. So even though she had the lowest correlation, the top 3 were still the same, the bottom 3 were still the same. Mm-hmm. And then Tina, who had a perfect correlation, her order was exactly the same for both, top to bottom: public recognition, which we just said was the worst one.
Wow.
Candy, t-shirt, Walmart, Starbucks, movies.
She does not fit in with Rob.
No.
At all. Tina and Rob would not be friends.
But she loves candy, but doesn't like Starbucks. So you and she would also not be friends.
Nope. And who wants that t-shirt?
But like you, she doesn't want to go to the movies.
Right.
We don't know what
I want to go to the movies. I just don't want people talking.
They did note when they did this that they knew that some of these ladies did not like coffee. So they put the Starbucks in there as a decoy to see if they got the spread that they were thinking they would.
Wow. Mm-hmm. They forgot that Starbucks also has tea.
Who knows if it did in 2008.
And little egg sandwiches.
Mm-hmm. They definitely didn't have those egg sandwiches.
Cake pops? None?
No.
Okay. So the advantages of using this ranking system is that it's faster, and because you can do it more quickly and more often, that may be valuable, and that preferences can change quickly. And if you do one preference assessment and then rely on those data for a long time, that could devalue the reinforcer, because if you receive it more than once, you may not like it that much anymore, which is exceedingly good advice as well for any clinical behavior analyst out there using the same preference assessment for their clients for months at a time. People don't like the same things all the time. And we should not assume that they do. So that's good advice to take away from this. My own caveat that I wrote on here is don't undervalue reinforcers of low monetary value. What matters is if they matter to the individual.
Oh, that's what was on the t-shirt that they got.
That was on the back.
Right.
And
they had a big dog on the front and on the back.
It had that very long quote.
Don't undervalue the reinforcers of low monetary value.
Diana PC 2021.
All right. So ranking is just fine, with the very large exception of the fact that we still don't know that if someone says, I like this thing, does it actually function as a reinforcer?
That's what I want to know. What's the point of having multiple means of using verbal preference assessments if they all amount to bupkis in the productivity department? But unfortunately, we don't have any more articles. Or do we?
We do.
Oh, good.
Yeah, so I'm going to talk to you about Slowiak's article on How May I Help You? Because I love the title. And also, when we were talking pre-show about all these authors, it sounded like we were in a Harry Potter film.
Oh, that's right.
Remember?
Wald Vogel.
Slowiak.
Oh.
Even though I've never seen Harry Potter.
It's a book as well.
I know.
You never seen the book?
I've never seen the book or the book. Just kidding. The movie. Okay, but this article comes right out of organizational behavior management, which is awesome. So it's looking at things outside of the field of developmental disabilities and looking at how we can increase the quality of patient care. So we have all been on a phone call with someone from a customer service rep, right, who has been rude.
Yep.
We've all been there, right? And when you're done that phone call, you're like, I am never calling that place again, right? We've all been there.
I actually, weirdly enough, read this article and then had to call my doctor's office.
Oh, no.
And I had just the most wonderful receptionist, but I was paying very close attention, like, did you start with a greeting? Did you ask me if you'd help me with everything you needed? I went through the list here.
Yeah.
This is why I don't call people.
That's true.
Because you're just rating them all the time on their ability to say hello. And
right. So the rationale for this study was that the people that are using, at customer service or that front line of support, administrative coordinators, they're called in the medical field, they're that front line or that first line of contact. And that may be enough to keep customers. And it may also be enough to push customers away if you're not getting great care there. So they also make the point, which I think is crucial, is that retaining existing customers is really helpful in saving money, reducing marketing, reducing time. I think they said it's 5 times more expensive to have a new customer.
Right.
So that's one of the reasons why it's so important that these administrative coordinators, whoever's answering the phones and being that first line of, your agency, are giving this best impression, right? They also make the claim that under the Affordable Care Act, so this was published in 2014. I don't know if it's changed, but hospitals are rated differently based on customer satisfaction and care. So again, it's more important that you're making sure that your patients are happy. So previous literature looked at whether task clarification, performance feedback, goal setting, and performance contingent rewards would increase overall performance at a variety of different agencies. So they wanted to replicate and extend that research. So the purpose of this study was to increase the quality of telephone customer service among the frontline professionals or the administrative coordinators at a medical clinic. And it's important, it was per management request. So the management called Julie and said, hey, Julie, need some help here. And so what they did, or what Julie did, is they first did a front-end performance analysis to identify some reasons why there might be poor customer service, to address those issues, and then use that analysis to develop a multi-component intervention, which we talked about, and then conduct maintenance and follow-up data. Cool? That's what they did.
I love it. I also love it when studies use FU as an abbreviation for follow-up, which they did in this one.
Yes, me too.
How does that?
FU.
No one looks at that and says,
I mean, I went to Furman University, and that was like our rally cry was FU 1 time, FU 2 times, FU 3 times, FU all the time. So, yeah.
Okay. Anyway.
So I'm a big fan.
Was that on the t-shirt?
Yeah, we had t-shirts for that.
I went to Dickinson, and ours was Go Hard Big Dick.
Oh. Wow.
Yeah.
It was on the t-shirt?
Yep.
Oh, nice.
And it was a devil.
Cool.
Anyway.
We also had the Gamecocks. Go Cox.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
You guys went to a real filthy university.
Yeah, we sure
That's
did.
University of South Carolina.
Okay. Anyway, so 20 full-time administrative coordinators participated in this experiment. They were all female. Informed consent wasn't obtained, but they put a sign on the wall about a month before the study saying that their calls would be monitored. It's actually quite clever that they did it a month before, because then they reduced reactivity, they said, because then, everyone knew and was aware that someone could monitor their calls, but they never knew when or when it was going to happen.
I found that so odd because I was under the impression that anyone who worked with any job in which you answered a phone had some sort of this call may be monitored.
Right, but I guess they didn't.
Huh.
So the administrative coordinators were observed during their normal work environment, and so they were set up at workstations. So there was 2 to 4 coordinators per workstation, and they are multiple workstations, right? So some of the workstations were located where everyone could access them when you walked to the clinic, and then there was other workstations where you would just do a follow-up, like, I'm going to come back in 6 months, right? We've all been to doctor's office when they have these different workstations, right? So each person had their own computer and telephone. Very important that they all had their own telephone. And then they made it a point to say they used the telephone to contact patients and assist callers. That was like a sentence. Like, this is what they used the telephone for.
Did they have those super cool headsets?
I hope so. All right, so there was 3 target behaviors or 3 dependent variables. The first one was greeting, right? So it was divided into 4 things: saying hi, identifying the clinic and center name, identifying your name, and offering help to the caller.
I love
Let's practice.
in OBM. I just love when they're, looking at jobs and specifying to that level. What were they doing before? Like, sup?
Right.
Is this the doctor's office? Oh, yeah.
We'll get there, too.
All right, I'm going to try it.
Ring, ring.
Hello, AV Inside Track. This is Diana. How may I help you?
Great job, Diana. Plus.
Thank
so
you.
if it occurred, right, you would mark a plus. And if it didn't occur for that opportunity, you'd mark it a minus.
I said, yo.
So you had to say hi. They also measured another dependent variable called tone of voice. So it had to be friendly. And they defined friendly as being energetic, enthusiastic, and varying tone and making the phone call personable. And so using the caller's name. That seems a little harder for me and a little more subjective.
Really hard. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It was marked as friendly or unfriendly. They got good IOA. So
Okay.
someone was either being very unfriendly or very friendly.
Okay, let me try. Here we go.
Okay.
Ring, ring.
Hi, AV Inside Track. How can I help you?
I would giggle
Wow.
so hard.
My
That
tone was very...
Erratic.
So we'll see.
It was energetic. It was clearly enthusiastic. And it had a varying tone.
That's amazing.
Friendly.
Wow. So we'll see. But they had great IOA. So however they trained the researcher and the researcher assistant, they were all on the same page. And then they also looked at a group performance DV, which was abandon rate. And I like that. I was like, what does that mean? It means not answering the phone.
Mm-hmm.
So they want to answer every phone
Sure.
call.
At first, because they mentioned it before they defined what it was, and I was like, well, they're just like hanging up on people. Like, ma'am, I don't have to make this appointment for you. Click.
No, it's just not answering the phone. And they measured that using telephone reports. So that makes sense. The first author, which is the only author, conducted direct observations, watching the employees make phone calls and answer the phone, and interviewed the clinic manager on what they thought was going on. The results from that analysis suggested that the administrative coordinators did not know there was a standard on how to answer the phone. They had no training on how to answer a phone and did not have a written protocol or a cheat sheet when answering the phone.
This is concerning.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. So they're like, oh, look at all these problems. Additionally,
Step 1, figure out what your employees should do and tell them.
Right. So they also said that no feedback was ever provided on these different types of behaviors, except if there was a complaint, and no correct behaviors were ever reinforced.
That's what everybody loves, a job in which they don't know what they're supposed to do, and the only time anyone tells them what to do differently is when someone's mad at them.
Right. Yeah, so during baseline...
They might not even need, a giant multi-component intervention here.
Right, but they're doing it. So during baseline, they have for greetings, they were only around like 55%. So that's basically 2 out of those 4 components.
Just answer the phone. And just
right, so
I wonder which parts.
So they did say that they were friendly about 50% of the time. Oh, yeah. So that's the second one. But so I'm not sure what they weren't asking. Maybe they weren't asking for help or telling them their name.
Maybe, I bet it's just like, hi, AP Inside Track.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
But we don't know. They don't tell us. But being friendly was better. So it's around 70 to 80%. So people were friendly more often than not. The abandoned phone call ranged between 5 and 8%. They said that less than 5% would have been ideal. But we'll talk about that. So I just thought it was important to talk about where we started and now where we're going, right? So for the intervention packet included a job aid, and that was just a little note card that said what you needed to do, right? Reminded them of the target behaviors and examples of the target behavior, like say hi and your name, right? And then they also included task clarification, so they updated the handbook. They provided the handbook to the administrative coordinators on the target behaviors and how to answer the phone. Now it was part of the handbook, so they had written clarification. And then the manager and the experimenter set the goals. Here for goal setting, the employees were not included in this. So an area of future research would be include the employees, right? Get them in there. And baseline was not shared with them prior to the study, prior to the start of the intervention. So they said that 75%, they wanted it to be 75% for greeting. So 3 of the 4 parts were completed during each call. 100% for friendly voice. Always be nice because that's like the number 1 predictor. And then they said they wanted the abandon rate to be less than 5%, right? So those are the goals that they had, although they didn't consult with the employees on those goals. Then they also provided performance feedback. So it's a pretty significant multi-component intervention. So they posted signs, right, that they're going to be monitored. Every Tuesday and Friday, they sent them a bar graph and written description of how they did, where their goal was. If they met their goal, they got to request a reward via email. If they didn't meet their goal, they were given specific feedback on what to do here. And they didn't ask them, they asked them like what they wanted, and they had a menu board of reinforcers. So you could choose from the menu board. So that's nice, right?
It is nice.
Because then you can have varied reinforcers depending on how well you do on Tuesday and Friday. Because what you want on Tuesday may not be what you want on Friday.
I would gladly pay you Tuesday for a hamburger today.
Right.
Right. I think just having a menu of reinforcers and being able to look at them would function as a reinforcer for me.
Me too. Yeah. I agree too. So these are pretty awesome. Half-hour paid lunch, free lunch, closer parking space, free access to the vending machine at a $5 limit. I was like, what?
Yeah, what do they got in there?
Or one movie ticket. Right? So those are the individual goals, right, on Tuesdays and Fridays. If the group met their goal, that abandon rate goal, then they got to choose one item from the menu of a group bonus. So they could do free lunch, free coffees, or donuts in the morning. So donuts in the morning were the only ones that they couldn't do that day.
Yeah.
Because it didn't, you have to.
Yeah.
Yes,
so those would be the following day.
There was a delay on that one.
Right. So they let the leaders of each group workstation know, and so they had that as part of it as well. So that's pretty awesome, right? So that's that performance contingent response. So they have the feedback, and then if you got it, you get these tangible items. So they did 3 to 5 days per week, about an hour and a half to 2 hours. And initially when I read this, I'm like, wouldn't there be activity of someone sitting right next to you? But they had a remote phone.
Smart,
right? So then it was like, I wrote it down in my notes, and then they're like, in case you were wondering, we used a remote phone. I'm like,
they're hacking in.
The administrative corners didn't know which calls were being monitored.
They couldn't hear the, Julie Slowiak breathing on the other end while they were on the
clicking sound.
So they used an ABA reversal design, where the A was a partial reversal because you can't reverse the things that you already know, right? Like the updated handbook.
Correct.
So
give me your handbook. I'm ripping out some of these pages.
It never occurred. So what they did is they had baseline. It occurred for 10 sessions until data were stable. They said it was around 2 weeks. They placed the intervention in place for 2.5 weeks and then stated that the intervention was over. The intervention has been concluded. And then they took those baseline data, those partial baseline data for 9 sessions, which lasted around 3.5 weeks, did maintenance once weekly for 7 weeks, and did a follow-up after 5 months. So that's kind of interesting, right? And so what they found was that this multi-treatment package, of the task clarification, the feedback, the goal setting, the tangible item, actually showed a pretty remarkable increase in correct greeting, right? All the way up to 100%. But when you remove the intervention, it starts decreasing.
It was a deterioration.
Yes. And then maintenance gets a little worse. Follow-up gets a little worse, but still higher than baseline. Yeah. Right? So that's okay, but, it might be helpful to have an intervention like this in place often. Friendliness hovered over 80%, right? We talked about it, but it's supposed to be 100%. And it was really close to 100%, between 90 and 100 throughout the intervention phase. But then partial reinforcement dips a little. Maintenance dips a little. There were 2 weeks where it was not great. Dipped below baseline during maintenance. And follow-up, we saw a little bit of an upswing, probably around 90. So a slight increase, but it's hard to be 100% friendly.
I would expect to have seen much more of a decrease or variability in friendliness, because that, I think, does play more into, varying, motivation. If I've had a bad day or it's the end of the day, where it's like saying hi where I work and my name, like that's pretty rote. Like, I'm surprised that drops.
Who knows?
Oh, I forgot to say hello. I'm sorry. I've just been sitting here quietly breathing on the phone. Sorry, sir or madam. What can I do for you?
And there wasn't a change. So they do say there was not a change at all from baseline to treatment to reversal to maintenance to follow-up, really, with the, what do they call it again?
The abandoned calls?
Yeah, the abandoned calls. But they say this probably shouldn't have been studied in this design because there's so many other factors, right?
Yeah.
It's staffing.
Yeah.
Part-time people are doing this and they weren't included in the study. So they said, we included it, but we probably shouldn't have because there's other things that could have been affected.
Yeah.
So, I think it was interesting to see the data, right? I would have liked a stronger demonstration of functional control, right? Maybe if they had put the intervention back in place to see if you see an increase in responding, although that's not the purpose of the study, right? They wanted to see, does it work? And it did work, right? For the two individual performance measures that they were looking at. We did see an increase above baseline slightly for friendly, right? And for greetings. But you're really not sure what component was effective in this treatment package, right? Was it just the job aid? Probably not, because you saw a decrement in responding, right? When you took everything else out. It's probably that tangible reinforcer.
Probably the donuts in the morning.
Right? Donuts in the morning came for group stuff, so you would have seen it, not with the individual performance.
Oh, fine.
But for you, it would have. But, I mean, it's hard for us to tell what exactly is, but, my guess from what they removed, that performance feedback paired on that contingent consequence is probably the main reason why behavior increased, but we don't know.
Right.
And sadly, we didn't see if any of the target behaviors actually made a difference in satisfaction surveys, right? So they were not available. The authors make this a limitation in their study, and I commend them for bringing it up, right? The author, because there's only one, that they increased these behaviors, but we're not sure if they made a difference.
Yeah,
right?
I think it's true about a lot of business research is that you can demonstrate some level of experimental control, but then there's almost always that extra question, like, yeah, but who cares? Right. Is that going to do anything? I'm so glad that you taught your employees to do X, Y, Z, but your company went out of business anyway, or you didn't make any more money, or you didn't make your customers more happy.
And I really would have loved to see and get a little more thought on what the employees felt about the intervention package, because social validity wasn't assessed for them, or if they thought this was an effective treatment at all, right? So I think it would be nice for future studies to include the employees in the goal setting and performance feedback, even though we know that the data are idiosyncratic usually when goal setting is there, but it does improve morale overall when you include employees. But yeah, so here, those staff reinforcers those tangible staff reinforcers may have led to increases in responding.
Or at least when paired with other items. And, this also might be another semi-replication of the idea of managers picking what they think their employees will like the best. I mean, I know they had the menu, so they had opportunities to choose within that menu too, and choice itself might have been like Diana said, just having the options of choosing something might have been more important than what was the something that you were able to choose.
I would want to put free hugs on it.
I'm the kind of person, as you know, Rob, that will just keep a gift card forever.
And ever.
Until it expires.
And ever.
Because it's worth more to me as the possibility of what I could have than the thing that I would buy with it.
So true. I remember one time you pulled out 15 gift cards, and I was like, I spend those immediately.
Yeah, I will never spend them.
I will never buy you a gift card.
Call the APA. I got something new for DSM-6.
I know you do, but you never use them.
Gross. It's just a bad habit. I'm sorry.
And I use it how I wish, which is to hold on to.
I don't know. I feel like it causes me severe anxiety to just have, you have a little wallet just filled with gift cards for real places. You could buy all sorts of things.
I know. But what if someday I really need it? Then I won't have it.
I've got a shoe gift card in my wallet right now, which I have not spent. That's more because I don't like to buy shoes. Although I need shoes.
You're very hard on shoes.
I'm not excited. I am tough on shoes.
Anyway, sometimes the option is even more enticing than having the thing. I'm trying to say.
So you should do a study in which you have multiple groups, and one group gets to choose what goes on their menu, and they get these great things, and the other group just gets to choose from a menu of items that you chose that you think are good, and then one group gets to choose from a menu of items that are all just awful, terrible items, and then see what the differences are between the groups. I bet there'd be a couple people that I hate all these options, but it is nice to get to choose one of them.
I did try to do a study like that, but the results were a little bit muddled.
In terms of they weren't very exciting, or other limitations?
It wasn't super clean.
Yeah. Ah, well.
Because where does the value of choice break down, right? Is it only, do you prefer choice when it's a highly preferred item, a moderately preferred item, or a selection of low preferred items like you're discussing? It was a little bit unclear. But I think it's an interesting question. I'm glad you brought it up.
Oh, well, I thank you. All right, well, I think it's time to get into Dissemination Station, where we will choose from a menu of important summary points to share out there for all you clinicians and researchers looking for new ideas. So I guess what have we learned? Let's start there. What have we learned about verbal preference assessments?
They work. You should use them.
They work. They work in the sense of they'd be correlated with if you did a actual preference assessment with the items.
Right. Yeah. And I think a menu option, I think the menu I would take away that I really like that idea, right? Because then you account for satiation and provide variability in your reinforcers. Treatment package only work when they are in place, right?
Sure.
So if you're going to try to increase performance of your staff, know that you might need to keep that in if you want that specific behavior to stay maintained at a high level.
Well, I guess the question would be, do we have any studies? I can't think of any in which there was some sort of a multi-component treatment that included some delivery of some form of reinforcer or reward that then had some sort of a schedule thinning. So it moved from the everyone gets a gift card when you hit your say hi quotient to bagels on Friday if everybody hits their say hi quotient, or if individuals hit their say hi quotient for the whole week or then the month.
I love bagels.
That I would be curious about.
That would be good. New study.
I don't know if I know that. There's literature on looking at what the chance of getting drawn from a lottery is, right? And then, what was it? 6%. You need to have a 6% chance or better.
We discussed those.
But not on the show.
Not in recent. I mean, not.
No, we did lottery. We did lotteries.
Not on this show.
No.
Not in the actual show. Different thing.
Not today.
Nope, not today.
Never on the show and not today.
Would you like to do that another time?
I know we did something. Oh, no, you know what we did? We did lotteries related to, I think, environmental practices.
Yes.
Maybe.
But I think they came out with pretty much the percentage you needed to have for your lottery to be effective.
Yeah, so there's that, but I don't know about the schedule thinning. And I think one of the challenges with this research is that all of this has looked at individual reinforcers, right? But if you're overseeing a big group, it may be really hard for you to provide a personalized reinforcer for each of your staff. And while that would be best practice, sometimes that may just not be feasible. So there's less research that I know of about how to best identify what's going to work for the whole group. And I would like to know what's going to work for the whole group. Like if you pick something that most people like, is that going to be effective? Or is there a way to try to like get everybody on the same page and excited about the same thing ahead of time before the delivery of the reinforcer?
You're going to love these t-shirts. Everyone's going to get one.
Yeah. Can you hype it up? So I think that would be good to know a little bit more about, as well as just the burning question of, do these things actually function as reinforcers? We still have rather limited info for that.
But it would make sense that when you remove the reinforcer, that behavior would decrease.
It would. And I mean, I feel like it's common sense to say, oh, well, we better leave it in place. But as a manager, there's lots of things that you're looking at. So it's not just the greetings and the phone call. There's probably all sorts of other types of quality control things that you are also worried about. So then it's hard to say, oh, I have this under control. Now I'm going to, reallocate my reinforcement somewhere else.
Right.
If that's going to now drop off, that's really disappointing. Right. So what other systems could be in place to thin it, like you guys are saying, or maintain it in some other way, or shift the reinforcer away from something tangible to being maintained by employer praise, some type of I don't know.
Well,
the board on Monsters Inc. and the scare floor board. Sure. Yeah.
I love that scare floor board. And my study did say, one of the big other limitations was that, sorry, I forgot about this one, is that they didn't even account for the people talking to people face to face. Right. So,
blank stares when customers come up to the window.
So you may, just like you said, you may hit one area and feel great about it, but then there's whole other areas that are lacking that are just as important.
Or maybe we don't know how important any of that is. We didn't even get those kind of final customer surveys afterwards. One of the big take-home points I get from this line of research is, what would be a great manager activity would be to talk to your employees for a little bit and ask them whether you ask them to like this, or just ask them in the context of normal conversations, things that they like, and then keeping that in mind when you're planning out your individual contingencies or maybe a group contingency. You might get lucky and everybody loves those big dog t-shirts, so we can get specialized ones with their names on it. And it's a fun
I want one.
Fun item for the group.
But I want it to spell D-A-double-G.
D-A-double-G? Dag?
Dag. Big dag.
I think there'd be a W in there.
D-A-W-G.
Dog.
D-A-W-G.
What did I say?
Is that what they already said?
You said D-A-G-G.
Oh, that's not what I meant. I meant D-A-W-G.
Oh.
What kind of manager are you giving their employees misspelled T-shirts?
Those are the cheaper ones.
Picturing you being like Rob Lowe on Parks and Rec and like memorizing what everybody likes and walking up and being like, Diana, you love Snickers bars and sunflowers.
I can totally see that too.
Everybody loved that character. I don't know what's wrong with that.
Everyone did love that character. I would have loved him to be my boss.
No. So some ideas for all you managers and supervisors out there when you're interested in finding out what might function as a reinforcer for your staff. Guess at the end of the day, probably a good idea to ask. And then ask yourself, am I tying this into some sort of other component treatment? Because I don't know if that will, on its face, just work to improve the behavior of note. Some things to keep in mind. And with that, we come to the end of our episode of ABA Inside Track. Thank you all very much for listening. We hope you enjoyed the show, and we would love it if you are so inclined to subscribe to get new episodes every week. You can subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, or wherever you like to get your podcasts. There are a lot of other ways that you can reach out and chat with us and give us feedback. Certainly, you can find these episodes posted on our YouTube page with the YouTube subtitling feature. You can go to our website, abainsidetrack.com, to find links to all of the articles we discussed, as well as links to purchase CEs for this and any of our other episodes. You can find us on social media as ABA Inside Track. We're on Twitter, Facebook, Pinterest, and Instagram. You can also, if you're interested in getting a little bit more ABA Inside Track action, subscribe to us on our Patreon page, patreon.com/ABA Inside Track, where for just $5 a month, you can access our bi-monthly social behavior analyst meetups, as well as get access to these podcasts a week in advance. That's right. If you're on our Patreon, you heard this episode last week, and you're now listening to a brand new episode. And if you're interested in even more ABA Inside Track content, as well as discounts at our CE store, you can also up your pledge at the $10 level to get our quarterly super duper long book club podcast. And when this episode comes out, I think we'll have a poll up for our new summer podcast, where the theme is going to be leisurely reads in the field. So shorter reads, but ones that I'm sure I can make us all talk about for 2 hours or more. And that's at patreon.com/ABA Inside Track. And finally, if you just want to say hi or share some feedback or have some episode ideas, email us at abainsidetrack@gmail.com. Well, thank you, Jackie and Diana, for another fun episode. You guys are my highest preferred, not items, but people.
I'm an item. Thanks.
Welcome to the 40s. I'm an item. Hi.
A hot ticket.
Yeah, real hot ticket. Also, very big thanks to Dr. Jim Carr for recording our intro, outro music, Kyle Sturry for our interstitial music, Dan Thabit of the Podcast Doctors for his editing, and Hollis Irvin from Sycamore Workshop for his visual designs. We'll be back next week with another full-length episode, but until then, keep responding. Bye.
Bye.